Thanks for tuning in to watch The Ordinary Filmmaker. It's Sunday, December the 12th, 2021. We're just 3 days away from the Nikon Z9 shipping to those that pre-ordered the camera on the first day that it was available. It's a really exciting time. I'm really super excited by this camera. Throughout much of 2020, we heard rumblings of the Nikon Z9 and Z8. I do believe that Nikon is working on the Z8, but it got overshadowed by all the attention the Nikon Z9 got. And there's a huge amount of resource constraints going on. Canon has already canceled 4 or 5 cameras that were due out in this year and the last quarter of last year. And I believe strongly that the Nikon Z8 is due out in 2022. But what are the rumors of the Nikon Z9? Well, I don't really care. They're pretty old and they're pretty stale, but I'd like to use a tool known as predictive analytics to shed light on what the Nikon Z8 is going to be. What is predictive analytics, you might ask? Well, it's something that's used in real estate when you go to sell your house. Instead of doing a really extensive test or survey of the house and the home and the real estate, what they simply do is they look at other, 3 to 5 homes that have sold in your area in the last so many years, and they use that as a range. They look at how the market is trending, how it's growing on an annualized basis, and then they look at, well, what is yours like? Is yours better than the rest or a little bit less? And then they price it according to that range. And what I want to do is I want to be able to use that same tool, predictive analytics, to look at what the Nikon Z8 is going to be. For the last 15, 20 years, Nikon and Canon have done the same sort of dance. Usually what would happen traditionally is would Nikon release a camera, theirs was the best, and then Canon would release one and leapfrog, and they'd continually leapfrog each other, producing very similar cameras, very similarly equipped. And also, the models that each camera company makes are very, very similar. The D6, the 1DX Mark III, you kind of get my drift here. So what I strongly believe is a good, how should we say, tool to measure here is we want to look at the Canon EOS R5. I believe the Z8 is going to come in very close to the capabilities of the R5, but I also believe we need to look at the Z9. So when it comes to things such as autofocus, I believe that the Z8 is going to have the same focus system as the Nikon Z9. So obviously it's going to do people, face, eye, head detection, all that kind of wonderful stuff. And then of course do its planes, trains, and automobiles, which it seems to be able to track every known vehicle out there, which is just absolutely crazy. So same autofocus system is found in the Z9, but in terms of some of the other things, what would we expect in terms of dynamic range, ISO? Well, ISO I think is going to be pretty standard, something like 100 to 51,200. I mean, it might go a little bit, it might go to 50 or 60, and it might, go up to 102,000 on ISO, but not a lot of surprises there. And in terms of dynamic range, I think we're going to be right around that 13 to 15 stops of dynamic range. I think that's going to be really good. As far as mechanical and electronic shutter, I think I like to use what the R5 is doing. It's going to be somewhere right around 10 to 12 frames mechanical and around 20 frames per second electronic. Well, what about the sensor? And this is kind of a big thing. I should have started off with the sensor. I think they're going to have the same sensor as the Nikon Z9. It's going to be 45 megapixels. And I think that's a really good sensor. And what that allows us to do is not only have really detailed images, and no one's going to be complaining like, oh, why did they put a 26 or a 20 in there or a 30? 45 gives you more than enough room for cropping and framing, but it also, as a video user, means you're going to have 8K video. 24, 25, 30 frames per second, and it's going to shoot up to RAW. Now 4K, I believe it's going to do 4K 120, just like the R5, but I do believe that Nikon, with its extra time and effort, it's going to be a little bit sharper than the R5. And the R5, to be honest, is a little bit soft in 4K 120. There's some scenes I shot where I really wished it had been a little bit sharper. So that's one area where Nikon could come ahead, being over a year, almost 2 years probably once it's announced and released, later than the R5. So definitely an improvement there. And that will come from improvements in the processor and the sensor, of course, the bandwidth of this camera. Now, looking to the Z9, I don't believe it's going to be as fast as clearing out the buffer. So, for example, if you've got a really fast card in there, like one of the Angel Birds, and you go ahead and you shoot 20 frames per second raw continuous, which is about 1.2 gigabytes per second, if you hold down that shutter on the Z9, most likely it's just going to keep going and going like you can with the Canon 1DX Mark III. You hold down that shutter and it's just going to shoot to your heart's content. But the Z8 being a camera that's just a notch down, I do believe it's going to be like the R5. So the R5, for example, if I just shoot and hold it down mechanical, it'll keep going and going and going as long as I have a really, really fast card capable of at least 1400 megabytes per second. But once I switch over to electronic, because of the buffering, because of the electronics, the innards of the design of the R5, I hold down that shutter button and probably around 8 seconds, 9 or 10 seconds, what's going to happen? It's going to start having some buffering issues. So I'll go for about, let's say 10 seconds, it'll hiccup for a little bit, and it'll let me shoot for another several seconds, and then it'll keep going through that cycle. And I believe the Z8 is going to be like that, because there has to be a reason for the price difference between the Z9 and the Z8. And it still has to look to the R5 and say, look, here's what Canon did with the R5, here's our Z8, and wow, doesn't it look so much more better? So much better. So much more better. Just doesn't sound right. What else did I make a note here? I've got a few things to make sure I didn't forget to say. Oh yeah, the sensor. I was just about to talk about the sensor. So other than 45 megapixels, which I believe is 100% given, what about the type of sensor? I really do believe it's going to have a backside illuminated stacked sensor. This would give it a big jump up on the R5. It allows it to move an awful lot of data very, very quickly. And that would allow it to, because it can move an awful lot of data, that feeds back into 4K 120 being a lot sharper. I really do think a backside illuminated stack sensor would be right for the R8. Sorry, I said R8, I mean Z8. All these, they sound similar, don't they? Sorry, I apologize. I'm probably going to get hate comments from both sides on this one here. Now, as far as full HD, I like what Sony's doing with their cameras. When you shoot in full HD, or 1920 by 1080 as it's known, they do 4K oversampled, or they do full sensor oversampled, and you get a more detailed image. And at a camera, whatever price this is going to be, and the same with the R5, why can't Canon do that? Why can't we have a more detailed 1080? Because there are times where I would just, if I could shoot this video in 1080 on the R5 and get it out there quicker, I would do it, but it just doesn't look nearly as good. And if you look at a camera like the Canon C100, which only has outputs in 1080, it has a 4K sensor, so that 1080 looks really, really good. So hopefully, but yeah, 1080 is just one of those things that really kind of irritates me, is that it's almost like it's forgotten when it's used by an awful lot of people. And I think Sony's one of the few companies that still gives people love that like to shoot in 1080. That didn't quite sound right, did it? Anyhow, let's forget that. More about video. 10-bit 422 internal, no surprises there. Dual card slots, no surprises there. But are they going to pull a Canon and give us one CF Express card, Type B, and one SD card? I don't care if it's UHS-2 or whatever else they come out with. I think, I really do think that SD cards in professional cameras are kind of done. I don't care what new specifications they come out with. CF Express cards are going to be faster. The throughput's so much better. No matter what improvements we make, I think CF Express cards are the way to go. So I'd really like to be able to, like to see dual CF Express cards in this camera, but I don't know. I don't know if Nikon's going to do that. Now, if they did do that, I think that would get them a lot of attention. I think that's a very, very good thing to be able to do. One thing it really helps out if you're shooting video, to be able to record video to both card slots at the same time and the same quality. So if one does go, you've got another card of equal speed that you can get the content off quicker. With my Canon R5, I do have a 1 terabyte card in there, and it's not a super fast one. It's just a regular V30 card, because I don't plan on using it. I just basically pop out the CF Express card, do all my work there, move things off, and it's very quick. There is one time, though, after shooting 4K 120, I forgot to go back in and tell it to record to both card slots, and of course it shot my entire video to the SD card slot, which took forever to copy off. I think it took half an hour. But if my main card is dead, I don't care if it takes half an hour. The fact that I haven't lost my recording, that matters. So to be able to actually have 2 CF Express card slots in the Nikon Z8 would be huge. But now, the last thing I want to talk to you about is price. Let's take a look again at the Nikon Z9. $5,500. That's $1,000 cheaper than the 1DX Mark III, Canon's flagship mirrorless sorry, made a mistake. Canon's flagship DSLR camera. They haven't come out with a mirrorless version, the R1 yet. We do have the R3, but it's $1,000 less than the 1DX Mark III, and it's $500 less than the R3, and it's $1,000 less than Sony's flagship, the Alpha 1. The Canon EOS R5 retails for right around $3,799 right now, $3,800. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Nikon drops that price at least $300. Now they could go aggressive and they can make it $500 less. I can't see them going $1,000 less. But then again, I didn't really expect to see the Nikon Z9 to be $1,000 less than the competition either. But let's roll these numbers around. $3,800 minus 3 is $3,500 minus 5, well, that would be $3,300. And that makes a huge difference. And you might not realize this, but only 30% of my audience is from the United States, which means 70% of my audience is having to deal with an exchange rate, which usually doesn't work out well for them, plus tariffs and other taxes. And you might think, wow, $3,300 or $3,800 is a lot in the US, but here in Canada or in the UK or in Europe, those prices go up considerably more. And even when you do a straight exchange rate and apply taxes, there's a huge difference quite often in these cameras. So if Nikon did drop it by $300 to $500, I think that would be really, really huge. Oh, and one last thing, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Your likes and your subscribes, they really do help this channel grow, and I take it as a virtual pat on the back. But now I want to take a look a little bit behind the scenes. I'm just going to ramble on here a little bit. I'm not going to really talk about anything new regarding the Z8 and Z9. I'll touch on them a little bit, but if you want to go now, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Okay, you're still here? I'm still super excited about the Nikon Z9. I really like to have this camera here. Nikon has put out a really, really incredible camera, and I know it doesn't do 30 frames per second, raw, full sensor readout, but still, even at 20 frames per second raw, lossless, in burst mode, you're looking at 1.2 gigabytes per second of data. That's a huge amount of data, so we're talking about high quality here, really detailed. And yes, we can go faster. We can shoot in JPEG and get a much faster rate. We can drop the megapixels and get all the way up to 120 frames per second. But in that full sensor readout, I still think that's pretty impressive. But the Z8, that's the one hole in the Nikon lineup that really has me interested. I like the Z6 and the Z7, the Mark IIs. They're really solid cameras, and they're priced in a... And this is the thing, Nikon, look at the pricing of Nikon's cameras. They're priced really, really well. So I expect the Z8 to be priced really, really well too. I think it's going to be right around $3,300 to $3,500. As far as 2022, when? Most likely mid-2022 for an announcement, and availability could be several months later. We could wait even later in the year. The whole resourcing problem that we have is only getting worse. All the issues there are just compounding upon each other, making it a lot harder to predict things. Even looking at Canon's lineup, we do know that they took 5 cameras that were planned for 2021 and Q4 of 2020, and have said, okay, let's cancel those, let's bring them back, let's up the capabilities a little bit, and then we'll try to get them back out there. I went to my Toyota dealership to just have an oil change the other day, and the last time I was there, they had a ton of cars there. Now, there's almost no cars in the parking lot. And Toyota was one of the companies that fared better than everybody else. They understood that just-in-time inventory meant that you have just enough of the key materials you need to get your job done, to be able to produce cars. And for semiconductors, they kept about a 6-month minimum of inventory so that they could keep producing in the event of a shortage. And other products, glass, metal, it was a shorter time frame. Well, they've since burnt through their supply, and now they, like everybody else, is having trouble getting stuff built in time. And I don't think that's going to change until 2024 to get back to normal. We could start to see some improvements in 2023 because we're waiting for those chip fabs to come back online. And that's the really frustrating thing here. So 2022, I really do expect the Z8 to come out. I'll get a bunch of cameras from Canon as well, and of course the Panasonic G8 Specs. Now, as far as this channel and what I'm trying to accomplish, I've been off this month. I'm taking it easy. I'm relaxing. There hasn't been a whole lot of news, which is perfect. I was really surprised at my video on the Canon EOS R5 R6 firmware update 1.5. That video in just a week has gotten 25,000 views. It's completely stunned me as to, I don't know, maybe I got the keywords right, maybe I got it out at the right time, maybe some channels have been recommending the video, I just don't know, but it's done really, really well. But I'm producing about a video a week here, and I was going to do another video on the Nikon lens roadmap. An image was leaked out, or not leaked out, an image was put out there, Nikon Rumors talked about it, and I looked at it and I thought, I want to enjoy the day with my son. There's not a whole lot of information here. There's an awful lot of predictive analytics that are going to go on there as well. And Nikon Rumors did a really good job. Take a look at his article where he talks about what he thinks it means for the lenses that are coming out. But for me, I thought, you know what, let's look at the Nikon Z8, because I think there's a lot of people that were really wowed by the Z9, but it's just out of their reach. We're talking about hobbyists, people who are retired, people who, when they want to do something, they want to do it right. They'd rather save up and get something better that's going to last them. And I think that's going to be the Z8. And I think you're going to be really, really happy with it. I've been using the Canon R5 for a year and a half now, and I'm very happy with it. The firmware updates have made it a whole lot better with Canon Log 3 and some other improvements, including the autofocus system, borrowing a bit from what the Nikon Z9 did with planes, trains, and automobiles. I took my camera out just yesterday, and I was using the super telephoto, the 800mm with a 2x extender. I was using it for wildlife. But then walking home, I was shooting cars from about 1 kilometer to 2 kilometers away, and I was staggered. Not only did it lock onto the cars, but the driver's face was in focus. It felt a little creepy, like I was spying on people. And I'll be honest with you, it almost harkened to some of those movies where you've got a photographer and they're spying on people from far away. It's just amazing how good that autofocus system is. So when it comes to the Z8, I think it's going to be better than the R5, and it should be, because Nikon's had a good year and a half to up their technology to improve upon what Canon did. Just as I expect the Canon R5 Mark II to be a better camera than the Mark I. So a very, very exciting year coming up. I just hope that things stay on schedule, that we do get the Z8 as planned, but we'll just have to wait and see. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. That's it for now. I've got a fresh pot of coffee upstairs, and my wife is making breakfast, so I'm looking forward to having some, you know, fresh cup of coffee, just coffee to start your day. Nice little bit of breakfast. It's sunny outside. It's going up to 5 today. It was 17 degrees yesterday, and I don't know what that means either. I use Fahrenheit in the summer. But for this time of year, it shouldn't be more than 2 or 3 degrees, but 17 degrees, windy is incredible, like 90 kilometers an hour. I'll put a side graphic here that gives you that in imperial and metric, but wow. Today it's just going up to 5 degrees, but sunny. I want to get out there with my son. I want to enjoy, and of course he wants to play a little bit of Xbox too, so we got to mix it up. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.